Yes. And good morning to you too. Am I mic'd up?
You're live.
I'm live. I'm live. I'm just having a quick scan of the screen to mentally hello everybody. Good morning to you all, wherever you are. Right. Oh, do I see Chani sitting there on the couch? And I heard she has COVID. I hope not. Can you hear me? Just wave. Is the volume's all right? Yeah. We've got a tremendous number of people today who are just sneakily attending. So I can't see what they're doing. They're all kind of blacked out screens and doing other things. Yeah. Good. Now I can actually take in who's actually here. Is there anyone still to come?
Juliana.
Right. We've got a kind of general topic title, if you like, for this year, for the Sunday classes this year, and it's simply living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging responsiveness. And I'd like to just remind you that doesn't mean the topic means Tarchin will talk about living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging responsiveness, but that actually it's a kind of invitation from me to you and you to me together to live with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging responsiveness. And although obviously I'm going to say lots of things this morning, I think we should just begin with the non-saying, the non-verbal living. So let's sit together for a few moments. And I can tell I'm going to barbecue before the class is out, so I'll just take off my sweater now. And that's kind of an invitation for you people to do the same thing. In other words, make yourself comfortable. Libby's putting on her sweater. Tarchin's taking off his sweater. Everyone's getting comfortable, right? Because it's actually really difficult to live with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging awareness if we're not comfortable and we're capable of doing something about it, right? Sometimes we're not capable of doing something about it, and so we can still find wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging responsiveness right there. But if we can do something about it, we need to. Okay? And so, first of all, let's just begin with a kind of sit-down dance. You've heard of lap dancing, but it's got a whole kind of connotation that right? And I don't mean that, I mean, you kind of sit down into the lap of your chair, right? And kind of, right, have a little bit of a stretch dance, right? And then as you're doing this, as you're moving, keep moving, right? But recognize that you're breathing. And actually your movements shape your breathing, and your breathing shapes your movements. I see now why everyone's blanked out their screens, you see, because then they can just sort of sit there like this. Right? But I'm spying on you, right? I want to see octopus hands and arms. And you imagine like somebody looking down on planet Earth right now, and they see all these arms waving from Brazil and Canada and Australia, New Zealand, right? And they're and you can feel feel the volume of your thighs. Right? They're not just like Michelin tire balloon man tires, thighs, right? They're actually filled with muscle and bone and arteries and veins, and there's pulsations, and actually your cells are stretching and dancing and as well, right? And so have a nice week. I'll see you next month. Isn't that really the gist of it, right? And then we sit down. And just dissolving into the rhythms of a mindful body. Not a mindfulness of your body. Your body is doing the minding. Right? Can you feel shoulders and neck and, right? You're sitting in the lap of this chair, and we're breathing, and we're smiling. And sometimes the smile is just a smile of letting go. We're smiling and we're breathing. And see if you could become so exquisitely sensitive to the breathing that you are not watching the breath, but you're feeling very subtle expansions and contractions through your chest, through your arms, through your legs, your toes, right? Your face, whole of your organism engaged in smiling, welcoming, and breathing as we settle into present, this presence. Smiling, and we're breathing, and we're present, and we're appreciating the environment around us and the sensations and feelings within us and the play between the two. Our eyes are open and seeing. Our ears are open and listening. Our noses are open and smelling. Our digestive system is sampling and tasting. And all the surfaces which together make up our beingness are touching. and feeling our togetherness. Friends on the path of Dharma. Friendships with trees and wind and grass and soil organisms. Of creatures, human and non-human, living their lives. This green Dharma community. And then I'd like to say some words of aspiration. And as you hear the words, savor how the tactile kinesthetic qualities of your body, being, presence shift and change and ripple and flow as they respond to the words and the meanings of the words. And if you wish, please join me. We take refuge in love and clear seeing. There's a tactile, kinesthetic quality of love and clear seeing. Can you recognize it? Can you feel it now? In your belly, in your throat, in your knuckles, in your fingernails. Okay? Even if you're hurting, if you look, you'll probably find some part of your being that's not hurting. And there you might find it. And then could you invite it to expand? We live courageously in this world of birthing and dying. Everything is impermanent. Everyone is impermanent. Ecosystems are impermanent. Climate systems are impermanent. Social systems are impermanent. Organisms are impermanent. There's no choice in this. But there is choice in living with heart, courage, right? La cour. Right? Courageously. We live courageously in this world of birthing and dying, however we're finding it. Our hearts embrace all companions on this path of lucidity and freedom. All my companions. We are never alone. If we exist, we're not alone. We might close our eyes to our companions. We might convince ourselves we don't have any companions, or that our companions are somewhere where we can't get to, and we're surrounded by non-companions. They're called enemies. Our hearts embrace all companions, all beingness that accompanies my living. Right? Companions of thought, and companions of feeling, and companions of remembering, and companions of the people next door. Companions aren't necessarily nice, but they are who we live with, and it is with them that we make the world. However innumerable beings are, I vow to meet them with kindness and interest. And really take this into the whole of your being. Feel the tactile, kinesthetic quality of kindness and interest. However inexhaustible the states of suffering are, I vow to touch them with patience and love. And this means allowing them to touch us also with patience and love. Touching is always mutual. And remembering the tactile, kinesthetic sense of patience and love. However immeasurable the dharmas are, I vow to explore them deeply and thoroughly. And the qualities of exploration, of aliveness, of contact, of curiosity, of wonderment, of allowingness. All dharmas of thought and feeling, and right, personal dharmas and collective dharmas. Truths, facts. Okay. However incomparable the mystery of interbeing, I vow to surrender to it freely. From this day forth, with wisdom and compassion as my lamp and staff, I dedicate all my life energies to the welfare of all beings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Today I would like to begin to speak about this vast topic of Samadhi. But before we launch ourselves into it. And I suspect that we may be pursuing this particular topic for the next Sunday and maybe even the Sunday after. It's so big because it depends on who's practicing and what kind of state of mind they're in as to how they understand it. Okay? But before we begin, I'd like to just take a few moments to see if anyone would like to share any observations from their explorations of living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging responsiveness in the ongoing mystery of your life. Right? And sometimes the observations even pop up in the form of question. It's fine. But I'd just like to make an opportunity for sharings of observation and or question, and then we may, because I think it's much more relevant to be addressing the actual juice of our living rather than just the Tarchin's theoretical thing that he prepared. And if you do, please, to try and make everybody be able to, if the people in the room are speaking, please speak as kind of clearly as you can with the idea that there's a microphone picking you up so people can hear. And vice versa, we'll make sure you're unmuted, and Stephen can help identify identify anyone waving. So if you'd like to speak, just wave or something like that, or anyone in the room. And meanwhile, I'll just sit here and continue to enjoy my smiling and breathing.
We've got Tina there. Looks like she's weird. I can't tell who that is.
Susan?
So for some years now, I start my refuge.
Pause for a moment. I just want to dial
Yes.
up your volume. Yes, please continue.
Okay, some years now, I start my refuge with each meditation with love, deep love. And when I add clear seeing to it, there's a recoil, there's a moving back from that. I'm obviously afraid to see clearly. So if you have any suggestions about how to work with that, I would really appreciate them.
I think it's kind of obvious that in the area that you're outlining, it's like the question is, what do you mean by seeing? Right? What do I mean by seeing? You know, it's like to imagine for a moment. I sometimes say this to people, and I'm probably somewhere in the neighborhood, in the range of time that we've known each other. You've heard me say this, but imagine for a moment you're going, well, I really love you. I just don't want to look at you, and I really love you, but I'd prefer not to listen to you, and I really love you, but I'd rather not smell you. And it's true, I really, really love you, but please don't touch me, and I don't want to touch you. And you know, forget about taste. I certainly don't want to taste you, right? But I really love you. And you go, well, what kind of love is that? Is the problem with the love, or is the problem with the seeing? Right? If I really see someone, you know, I can't remember the translation into one of the languages in Africa, where they will say, I hear you. Or sometimes they'll even say, I see you. But they don't mean just I see you with my eyes. They mean I see all of you. Like I see you in the fullness of what you are, lumps, bumps, warts, talents, wonderments, beauties, the whole thing. Right? You know, in a sense, perhaps, I'm not sure that when I say love and clear seeing, when I say it, I take refuge in love and clear seeing, I'm not really talking about taking refuge in two things. I'm sort of like I'm just saying the same thing in different ways. Like to love is to really see. Or are you only seeing what you'd like to see? You see, it's a kind of it's a tricky thing here. We don't, if we think of love and seeing as two different things, then I'm not sure that that's what I've been suggesting. Right? To really, to be here for another, to really, I'm really here for you. I just don't want to talk to you. You know, it kind of doesn't make sense to me. And I think it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. So that sense of, is there seeing to really, the question isn't so much, you know, I don't want to see, but you see, if I see, then I'm being seen. If I listen, if I hear, I'm being heard. If I'm touching, I'm being touched. And so it's sort of like, I want to see you, but I don't want you to see me, because we're kind of hiding ourselves. You know, maybe I wonder, I'm just raising sort of speculations on your behalf to take in there, you know. Is it so much the problem of you don't want to see, or is it the problem of you're reluctant to be seen? It's something to kind of work with. Yeah. Are there any other observations or questions or? Okay.
On the top left there.
Tara? Oh yes, I can see you got a little icon, a hand icon. But
now? Can you hear me?
yes.
I guess it kind of follows on what you're talking about, and what, like, something I'm really working with now is being able to fully, for someone who's really close to me, who's in a really bad mental place and is being really resistant to change, and being able to be supporting them and be there for them without getting super frustrated that they're not willing to open to my like advice and ideas about moving forward and not be too badgering.
Oh, is that all? You must be the only person in the world to experience something like this. Okay. You know, I mean, you know, what can I do when they're not able to receive my wisdom and my intelligent suggestions? And I mean, you know, actually, joking aside, right? Obviously, we get into, sometimes we find ourselves in these situations and they're very painful. They're deeply disturbing. Right? And we try and think, how can I do this and how can I do that? Sometimes it's actually valuable to recognize that there are times when we can't do anything. That's kind of difficult for a lot of people to come to, because it feels like hopelessness, like despair, right? I can't do anything. But I would say, I would like to add a little bit more. I can't do anything except be an example to others of awakening in action. Okay? You know, you could say, oh, well, be kind. But the person then takes that perhaps as a criticism. You know, what you're really saying is, I'm not kind, I should be kind. You know, so it doesn't matter. You say the thing and it ends up in a result that you don't want. So perhaps instead of saying be kind, you're just kind. Right? That you're present, that you're engaged, that you have all the 6 parami that we've been sort of building this year on, right? All of them are in process in your being. And when, in a sense, like, we have this phrase, like bees drawn to the honey. Years ago, Rinpoche gave me a little 5,000-year-old coin that had been found in the ruins of Ephesus. And on one side was an antelope, and on the other side was a bee. So it's an incredibly old kind of object, tiny little thing, right? And he gave it to me, and he put it into my hand, and he was just sort of seeing me off. And he said, "Go and make honey." And so sometimes, it's just like, get on with your work as a bee. You're a busy bee. And you're making honey, right? So be a demonstration of honey making, right? Delicious nectar, kind of irresistible. Right? Whenever Mary makes granola, she makes these kind of big trays of granola, and then the honey goes on top of it, and then it goes in the oven. And we have to close even in the summer, it's difficult in the summer making granola in the summer, because you have to close the doors and the windows, everything, because there'll be millions of bees all coming up against the screen, and they're all coming out. You can't even go outside anymore, because the smell of the honey is like bringing beings in. And people are actually attracted. In the end, there is a deep, the aliveness, the dharma-ness of their being is attracted to the honey. And sometimes, we go, "Oh, is that all I can do?" But I'm not sure that that's such a diminutive thing, all that I can do. Maybe the world would be a much better place if nobody talked about healing and improving their lives, and nobody gave advice, but everyone just lived, right, as manifestations of generosity and wholesome relating and patience and skilled use of energy and a continuity of caring and inquiry and profound understanding, right? And didn't say any advice whatsoever. I think actually maybe that would be a planet of enlightened beings. And so, what I'm saying is simple to say. And what I'm saying is also not too difficult to empathize with and understand. But the act of utilizing this and engaging with this with confidence isn't easy. It kind of goes against the grain of our society. It says, do something. And so we will do something even when not doing anything doesn't help. It makes sense to do something when doing something helps. But it doesn't make sense to do something just for the sake of doing. As they say, if you got a hammer and you got a problem, they say you got to solve the problem by hammering, right? So we try and solve a problem of drug abuse and addiction and so on with a military solution. We have a war against drugs. We've become very militaristic. We want to have a war against COVID. We want to have a war against the bad guys, whoever they are, the Ukrainians or the Russians or the NATO people or the Chinese or the whoever that we name as the bad guys. We're going to have war against them. We're going to deal with this problem. What about a war with neuroses or a war with greed or it still will sort of fight it, will blow it up. But there's sometimes we realize that the very act of waging war against this problem exacerbates the problem. Right? And you say, well, I got to do something. You can't just sit here. You got to do something. You got to at least make a demonstration of objection. But I wonder if maybe it would be an interesting... We've done that. Human beings have done this for a long time. So why not? What we haven't done for a long time is experimenting with doing nothing. It's not really nothing, because it's like to be an example of generosity. And so forth. So I think that's all I can say, Tara. Be an example to others of awakening in action.
Thank you.
Oh, remarkable. I'd like to feel our way into this topic of Samadhi in a kind of classically Tarchin sideways manner. And so I'd like to do this by reading the first 4 verses of a longer poem that popped up quite a few years ago. But I not just to kind of entertain you, but as think of this as a kind of I want to feel our way into Samadhi experientially rather than talking. We might even get to dictionary definitions somewhere along the line of Samadhi, but that's kind of not understanding Samadhi. And so some of these, I use a number of pronouns here. In 3 verses, I use the pronoun I use the pronoun we, and I use the pronoun you. Okay? So it sort of covers all the bases. Okay? So see if you can just allow these words to go in as if it was a kind of guided meditation, or I don't even like the idea of a guided meditation. Think of it as an inspired meditation. You know, like, well, not trying to kind of guide you along, but to, in a sense, inspire something to kind of blossom in your being. Right? So even though I might say the word I, let this be you saying the word I. You are saying this. Okay? I am animate. I am an animal. I am born from life and living, and so, dear friend, are you. Everything we experience reverberates with these truths. We exist as a melodic continuity, musing music, acapelling the universe into being. Weavings of texture, rhythm, and timbre, this kinetic and kinesthetic presencing. A multi-dimensional realm, a multi-realmed, multi-dimensional dancing. Dancings within dancings. Dancing with dancings. Beginning with the fullness of what you are, Not what you name, describe, or explain, but what you actually are. Finding yourself awash on a timeless beach of ever-fresh nowing, discovering beingness anew. I am animate. I move, I am movement, and I can move. I can blink. I can close my eyes. I can open my eyes. Okay? I move, but I'm also moved. And there's a kind of a continuous dialogue, right, between being moved and me moving. I'm born from life and living. Not just born from my mother so many decades ago, that too, but born from life and living. It kind of hints to me, it suggests to me a continuum of beingness that I am that stretches back billions of years. And see, you know, can I just rest for a moment, and almost like as if I'm sensing, like I feel something of existing. Do you not feel some kind of existence? You exist. The feeling of being it's not just a mental idea. It's a kind of an integration, if you like, of metabolic processes and kind of cell communications and tissue pullings and pullings and right excretings and absorbings and right givings and receivings and right all this kind of thing. It is very quiet, it's just there. It's absolutely out of your control. And yet, strangely enough, when you do something, you're harnessing that. I am animate, I am an animal, I am born from life and living, and I look at you, dear friend, and I see that so, dear friend, are you. Whoa! And we're here in this room together, in this Zoom room together, if you like, right? We are communicating, we are responding with and through each other. This is just mind-bogglingly awesome if you really take it, you know, like open up to what's really actually going on. And it's going on all the time, even when you are in miserable states of forgetting entirely that this is going on. I'm not animate. I'm so-and-so with a social insurance number. You know, I'm a CEO of a corporation. I'm a teacher. I'm a student. I'm a failure. I'm a this. I'm a that. Or I'm another. But no, you're animate and you're an animal. This is more fundamental. Let's drop into this. Everything we experience reverberates with these truths of being animate animals engaging with other animate animals and other dances of animation. Everything we touch responds to us touching them. And every time we touch something, that is them touching us and we're responding to them. And it's instantaneous and continuous. It's absolutely continuous. Samadhi is sometimes it gets translated in many, many different ways depending on the tradition and the context and so on. And sometimes it even refers to meditation. Right? And it can refer to absorption. Okay? But as I've, in translating it in some situations, I've found it quite useful for myself, perhaps it's useful for you, to think of it as a continuity of caring and inquiry. I am animate. I am an animal. Oh, you're animate. You're an animal. What on earth's going on? How can we do this well so that my animateness is kind of synergizing the best of your animateness and vice versa? Okay? It's absolutely juicy. It's absolutely real. It's not Buddhist. It's not a philosophical concept. It's what we're doing. A continuity. There's oh, I'm animate, I'm an animal, and then I stop being that and I become a concept. And then I start up being an animal and an animate animal again. And a lot of people don't even want to be animals, for God's sake. They want to transcend being human and become a dewa. Right? Whereas actually it's more likely you're going to transcend being human and become a pumpkin. Extraordinary, right? Right? You're going to we engage. Think of this. This is what we're talking about in my mind is in a sense non-negotiable. It's simply celebrating the fact of the Dharma that is, the truth, that which holds and nourishes, and the holding and nourishing that we simultaneously do. Okay? We exist as a melodic continuity. All these kind of rhythms and shiftings and changes is a kind of the music of my being is me. Okay? I mean, some people here who are attending this class, either long distance or right here, might even be able to say, and might have said at some time, oh, I'm not into music. I'm not a musician. I'm tone deaf. Okay? It's a kind of way of speaking, but it's an absolute delusion. In my silence, I am music. There's syncopations of rhythms and so on. I was going to only stay with the first 3 verses, but I have to just jump into the next one. Feeling the recurring waves, rhythmically similar yet individually unique. Pushing and pulling, filling and emptying, covering and exposing, secreting and absorbing, tumbling and churning, frothing and fizzling, initiating and responding, revealing and hiding, ungraspable revelation. This domain of gestation, a birthing room of values. Okay? But the sense of the musing, we exist as a melodic continuity. And when the music gets completely shattered, right? There's something, I would like to make a jump again back to Samadhi. I would like to suggest that maybe we could think of Samadhi is the activity is the continual activity of attunement. Right? In a sense, engaging in the sensitive and subtle adjustments so that our dancing can syncopate and synergize and make beautiful music with whoever else or whatever else it is that we are engaging with. You can't possibly jam together as a musician if you don't listen deeply to what the other musicians are, the sounds that they're making. It's not just, if you just ignore them, you just go into your own thing, it'll just be dissonant. You don't harmonize together. The seeing and the loving and the harmonizing, they're all connected. We exist as a melodic continuity, musing music, right? It's a kind of, I like this, the muse and the musing is like, we think of it as contemplative, sensitive attunement, mutual attuning. Okay? If you watch a musical concert, live music, whether a symphony or anything, you'll see sometimes they'll be playing along, and then there'll be a kind of a very quick, usually incredibly skillful. There'll be a little tick, and they just tighten their thing or change because the instrument, in a sense, gradually goes out of tune through the playing. If you keep plucking the string, it gets kind of looser and looser and looser and looser, and eventually the sound is flat. It's not kind of tuned to the other instrumentalists. So you have to kind of sharpen it. You have to tighten it up. Okay? And so attunement isn't something you just do once. It's continuous. Right? And imagine for a moment that actually you don't attune and then you make the music. Imagine for a moment that musing music is none other than continuous attunement. Okay. Musing music, acapelling the universe into being. Right? There's no other instrument. The a cappella is in a sense this kind of complex, harmonious human voice creations, right? But in the poem here, I'm kind of using it as a metaphor, and it's saying that this, it's only the voice. You're not adding any other instruments, right? It's just the voice. That's the acapelling, right? So we're only existing as the musing music. There's no other instrument that comes in here. There's just our living. I got no other instrument to play. I got no other music to make. But the living that I am and the living that we together are. Even just to bring this to mind before we so-called practice, right? It's like there's a whole different kettle of fish who's practicing. Weavings of texture and rhythm and timbre, this kinetic and kinesthetic presencing, right? It's kinetic, it's movement seen by an observer. It's kinesthetic, it's movement experienced by the experiencer. We're both seeing the movement, the kinetic move. You see the kinetics of another being, and you feel the kinesthetic qualities, shiftings and changes of movement of your own being. Right? A kinetic and kinesthetic presencing. Multi-realmed, multi-dimensional dancing, cells and molecules and organs and organisms and ecosystems and societies and families and the whole thing. And so we're entering into this is to live with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging responsiveness. Right? We're talking about it, but as we're talking, we're also living. Okay? And so the person might say, well, where should I begin? Where do I begin my practice? Where do I begin to solve this problem of my life? Or this problem of somebody else's life? It doesn't really matter how you conceive of the situation, right? You begin with the fullness of what you are. Imagine, begin with the partiality of what you would like to be. Begin with some little puny, begin with your CV. Begin with the BS that you feed everybody else about and you try and convince yourself is true. Right? If you think about it, right? Like, you begin with the fullness of what you are, not what you name, describe or explain to yourself or to anybody else, right? But what you actually are, right? Animate, animal, born from life and living, engaged with dear friends who are equally doing this, right? And sometimes we find, oh, we're not doing this. We lose the plot. You know, I'm not engaging with another being as a dear friend. I'm engaging with another being as a problem or an enemy or something to be fixed. Right? I've forgotten that they're animate and an animal. I'm animate and animal, and they're a problem. Or maybe they're an animal, an animate, and I'm just a problem. Okay? And so just by simply recognizing that we're not doing this, can, for the eco-sattva bodhisattva on the path, be sufficient to go, oh yeah, I'm remembering, this is, and we just gently nudge the direction differently. You know, this is much more subtle and totally engaging than trying to focus on some point and ignore everything else, called meditation. Finding yourself awash on a timeless beach of ever-fresh knowing, discovering beingness in you. And years ago, we used to do long kind of study retreat explorations that we call living exploration, and we took groups of small groups of people, usually around a dozen people or up to 16 or something, and we go to relatively remote parts of the planet. They don't exist in remoteness anymore, right? But then we could find relatively remote parts of the planet, and we would study in nature and meditate and have classes and explore the environment and so on and so forth. And one of the very early living exploration trips that we did was down in northern Queensland in Australia. And we spent about 1/3 of 2 months in the desert and 1/3 of the time in the rainforest and 1/3 of the time on the Great Barrier Reef. And at one point while we were on the reef, I suggested an exploration for people. And we were camping on an isolated beach where there wasn't anybody else. It was kind of wild, you know, and the rainforest came down to the sea. And I suggested, it was a very lovely day. It wasn't stormy, it wasn't threatening. It's a very paradisical kind of situation and circumstance. And the people had been together for quite a long time. They basically kind of trusted each other and enjoyed being with each other. So, you know, I'm just saying everything's in place, you know, there weren't extraneous problems, right? And then I suggested to them that they go down to the sea at night by themselves, away from everybody else, right? And that they strip off their clothes and go into the sea naked. And then just lie on their backs and float and gaze at the stars while they're floating in the ocean, right? And then just allow because it was very gentle waves, allow the very gentle waves to kind of wash them up on the shore so that they could feel their body bumping on the sand and bumping up on the shore. And they had this kind of imagination exercise that they'd somehow just suddenly teleported from some other planet. There used to be sort of purple slime molds on planet Zorb, in some other galaxy, and they suddenly find themselves in this human form, in this kind of fleshy body, washed up on a beach, right? And they began to, and the idea was then begin to feel their body as if they were feeling their body totally new. They'd never seen this before. They're just beginning, like, what on earth is this? What can it do? What does it imply? What's it like to see this thing new? That was an original exercise. Years and years, decades later, this poem emerged. And it kind of remembering that just took it much further, right? Finding yourself awash on a timeless beach of now. In a sense, when the awash part is like, how can I put it? A lot of people could have a moment in their life when they would say in dismay, I didn't choose to be here, right? And as if that's a problem. Actually, you never chose to be here, right? Everyone came here because they talked to somebody else or heard something. There were situations and circumstances that led you to being here. If those things hadn't happened, it wouldn't have happened. If I think of the incredibly tiny framework of coincidences and circumstances that took me to meeting Namgyal Rinpoche, the main teacher that I studied with. And just imagining that if I hadn't have just by fluke bumped into an old friend on a main street in downtown Toronto, and I wasn't looking for him and I hadn't talked to him for years, and he kind of dragged me into a class his teacher was giving, who was Namgyal. I mean, I could have just sort of looked in the storefront and this guy walked by and neither of us saw each other and it wouldn't have happened. And we wouldn't be here. None of this would be happening. We go, oh no, it was karma. I planned it all. We've got it all under... Look, the fact of the matter is we're awash. We're awash in an ocean of becoming. And we move on the waves. And, the exercise in Queensland was done on a beautiful day. And, I didn't say go out in the middle of a storm or in an infestation of stinging jellyfish. Or, or there are tigers on the beach that are going to eat you or something. It wasn't like that. It was safe. It wasn't trying to challenge people this. But sometimes it's true, the ocean is wild. And sometimes the beach is made of rocks, right? And when you push up on the sand, you can feel the grittiness of the sand. There's a kind of a grittiness of rubbing up against somebody. Some people are really smooth, right? And some people are real jagged, right? And when they're jagged, you go, "Urgh!" And you're discovering, oh, I'm a urgh. I'm really a nice, loving being. It's just today I'm not. No, this is it. So you're finding yourself awash on a timeless beach of ever-fresh nowing. This newness. Now, like, take it out of the beach and the water and the sand. And it's like every moment we step into the unknown and we rediscover, like discovering beingness anew. Okay? And where we've got to at this point, using my first 3 verses of this poem, is actually preparing an attitude and a way of being which is now most supportive of Dharma practice. Now we can begin to practice. This is the base. This is the base of all our living. That's already there, whether you practice it or not. Okay? And so imagine for a moment, right, you're right in this quality, discovering you're awash on a timeless beach of now, right? This timeless beach of now happens to be a class that Tarchin's giving at 9 Windridge Lane in New Zealand, right? This is the particular beach, right? You're awash on it, right? And you're discovering the kind of giving, receiving that's going on. This is Dana Parami. There's like this like givings and receivings, like your secretings and absorbings. Right? You're kind of secreting. Oh God. We'll have to clean the whole living room after you leave, you know. It's like you're all secreting. You're leaving bodily substances on our furniture, right? I mean, that's why it's much better having Zoom classes. You know, I can keep you all at a distance, right? Because you're secreting. But it's just like, it's disgusting, right? And not only that, it's like there's bits of snot and spittle and flakes of skin. And, you know, since I've been speaking, I had a shower this morning, you know, to try and minimize it for you, right? But I'm already raining down. It's not a rain of blessing. It's a rain of dead skin cells. And not only that, but every time I breathe in, I'm sucking bits of you into me, right? And then not only that, the bits of you that go into me, they kind of sit in there and they kind of dissolve or something, and they get absorbed into, you know, I'm secreting and I'm absorbing, I'm secreting anger and I'm secreting happiness and I'm secreting pleasure and I'm secreting aspiration and I'm secreting misery and complaining. And other people are absorbing, you know, we're kind of, you know, we're all blotting paper. Right? This generosity is not something we turn on and turn off. It's the very juice of being animate. And when we're enhancing it, generosity, right, to give material support, emotional support, and an example to others of awakening in action, right? This upcoming, this kind of, we're actually just making a point to, okay, I'm beginning to see how profound this giving receiving is. Can I gently familiarize with the possibilities? Like, how far could I take this? How far could I nudge this? Right? And so this becomes our practice, right, of living with wisdom, compassion, and non-clinging responsiveness, right, is just in the flow of being an animate animal in the process of giving, receiving. Right? And you receive, like, today I'm practicing absolute stinginess. Okay? Today I'm going to practice ness. Right? A lot of it's really hard to put into words. The range of our practice is far beyond our ability to put them into words. There's subtleties of grumpiness. You can be grumpy, you can be really grumpy, you can be a little bit grumpy, you can be kind of prickly grumpy and kind of flat grumpy and slimy grumpy and jerky grumpy and explosively grumpy. There's lots of grumpies. So imagine as an eco-sattva bodhisattva who is interested in actually that it becomes meaningful to them, that offering their life as an example of awakening in action is truly the best gift that they have to offer. Right? And you want to take a step further and actually activate this. Like, really, what can I do to nudge this on further? And we say, like, cultivate generosity. Right? And then we begin to add to this kind of wholesome relating. Right? You know, wholesome relating. Right? Wholesome relating through body, through speech, through mind. Right? Relating in a way so that our relationship supports the whole. Right? We live so much of our life in fragmentation, right? Fragmented relationship. I relate with my friends, but that means that I don't relate with my non-friends. Right? But actually most of the world is kind of non-friends in the sense that you don't know them. It's kind of getting increasingly rare to even not know all the neighbors that live around your house. Patience, right? Poised readiness. This kind of increasing recognition that everything, every animate animal being that's acapelling the universe into being through their life, right, has its own timing. 3/4 time, 4/4 time, 6/8 time. You know, music has timing. You come along with your bossa nova, right, and somebody else wants to do a military march, right? And it's kind of like a bit of a, I'm not quite sure if this is what they meant by jam session. You kind of jam all these different rhythms into one place. Timing, right? And a recognition that not necessarily the other person's timing isn't necessarily my timing. And actually have the space for honoring their timing. That's why actually it's probably, we have so much problems with helping others who we really want to help, right? But it's often a non-recognition of their timing. Sometimes we need time to grieve. We need time just to kind of do nothing, to fall apart. Okay? And be kind of loved in that, to be supported in that. And then slowly the plant starts to grow again. Somewhere along the line it will, because that's what we are. Right? It might take a week, it might take a month, it might take years. It might take your whole life. But what else have you got to do? Right? But to nurture the soil and give the space for the mystery to happen. Okay? And then we've got skilled use of energy. Right? We begin to, in a sense, with this kind of greater generosity and so on, now we can begin to kind of nudge the process. Right? Encouraging the wholesome and kind of not encouraging the unwholesome. Okay? We're beginning to have the kind of the skill to be this animate animal flowing in this kind of community of life unfolding, right? In ways that can more skillfully be with the fact that everyone has problems. However inexhaustible the states of suffering are, they're inexhaustible. Well, you got dealt with that one. Now another one comes up. Some of you have had the experience of having a kind of diagnosed illness, and then the diagnosed illness comes to an end, and then all of a sudden some other symptom comes up. Oh, it's not fair. No, that's actually the wrong description. That's life. That's the description. Okay? And so finally we come to, so obviously we're, as a eco-sattva bodhisattva, we're working on these parami, and we're allowing these parami to be kind of exploration points in our living. And it's not done on a meditation cushion. It's done on the cushion of our life, in the cushion of our friends, which may be a meditation cushion. It may include a meditation cushion, but it's not you stop your living and go on the meditation cushion and sort this out. And then finally we come to this fifth parami. Finally, we're here. Samadhi parami. Okay? And I looked at, lots of times people think of samadhi and they associate this with meditation work. And they associate meditation work with sitting on a cushion, right? Or sitting on the floor, right? Or, at least sitting on the floor. I mean, you can't really I mean, Mary's the only person in the room who could be meditating, you know, like everybody else is sitting in chairs, and everyone knows that sitting in a chair isn't real meditation. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, it's okay. It's a bit of a thing for Westerners who can't hack the pace. But if you're really into it, you're doing a full lotus posture and it's meditation. But actually in meditation, we want to sit down into the fullness of the recognition of the animateness and the animalness of our living, and the animateness and the animalness of the living of all the beings that accompany us. We sit down in the midst of that, and we cultivate generosity, and we cultivate wholesome relating, and we cultivate patience, and we cultivate skilled use of energy. Okay? And the word samadhi is, as I said, it's translated in many different ways, and sometimes it's translated as absorption, and we talk about, for those in the know, you know, we'll talk about, oh, so-and-so was dwelling in samadhi, you know, and samadhi absorption, it's almost like no one home. You're so focused in on samadhi, on the breath, that you don't notice anything else that's going on. You're just kind of one pointed kind of focus. You're in samadhi, right? And people would associate this with some other forms of teaching. For example, particularly in the Theravadan teachings of Buddhism, there's a lot of focus on what's called the jhanas, right? Jhanas are kind of states of absorption. And so it's almost like people conjure up this idea that I'm going to be totally absorbed in this. And there's 4 jhanas with form, and there's 4 jhanas without form, and they're all named, and they have special things and characteristics and so on. Were you in jhana or weren't you in jhana? Then you get up and go about your business for the rest of the day. But samadhi is actually used more in the Mahayana tradition, and in that they talk about, they have millions, they don't have just 8 jhanas, they have millions of samadhis. You can make them up as you go. You know, they have wonderful things like ocean seal samadhi, you know, but they can also have riding the bike samadhi, and picking your nose samadhi, and reading the newspaper samadhi. And I once heard a humorous story told to me by a rather puzzled student, right, who apparently there was some Zen teacher in California who was constantly urging people to do one thing at a time. Right? Just do one thing at a time. Like, give all your attention to what you're doing. One thing at a time. And this Japanese Zen teacher was staying with this person in their home in California. And he came down one morning to see the Japanese man at breakfast. And the radio was on. He was reading a newspaper, drinking coffee, and kind of stirring around his scrambled eggs or something. And he said, "Sensei, you said we should just do one thing at a time." And he said, "I am doing one thing. I'm reading the newspaper, listening to the radio, stirring my coffee, eating the, you know, right?" And so in a sense, like, samadhi could be bigger than just this kind of fantasy that many Westerners have, that deep absorption in meditation is taking you to a place which is almost like cut off from the real world, with quotation marks around it. Yeah? So, you know, I looked up, samadhi's got pages and pages in the dictionary, and for you I looked up, jotted down a few bits from the dictionary for you this morning. So samma can mean balance. And adhi means first or original, right? So in this sense, samadhi, put them together, samadhi is the state of original balance. Okay? Now this gives a whole different feeling to me. It's like a sense of, I'm cultivating a sense of balance, and this idea of original balance, the original eco-sattvaness that I am, the animate, this whole thing is a kind of a balance. Think, oh, there's climate change and so on. No. It's just the continuous melodic acapelling of the universe into being, trying to balance what a lot of human beings have been doing for a long time. Right? The balancing it's always been in balance. Our problem is we say we don't like that kind of balance. Some, SAM on its own, can mean together, and it can mean integrated. And with a stroke over it can mean towards. And ha can mean to get or to hold. And so samadhi can actually literally translate as to acquire integration or wholeness. So think of this for a moment, that your meditation work is actually the work of integration. You're integrating generosity, wholesome relating, patience, skilled use of energy, self, other, micro, macro, inner, outer. You're integrating. This is my work of integrating this. Because if you look at it, you'll see that sometimes when you're feeling very good, and I'm speaking about just in an ordinary way, in other words, not some kind of extravagant meditation state or something like that. You're feeling really good, and you probably feel more on the side of you're feeling fairly integrated. And when we're having difficulties, we have difficulty with another person, with our feelings, with our unfinished businesses, with whatever, we feel to a degree fragmented and disintegrated. So it's not a matter that you should sit in meditation, but you should value and cultivate and encourage integration. Samadhi. This might involve watching your breath, observing your breath, or scanning your body, or doing all kinds of meditation exercises. But if you do these exercises without a sense of integrating the whole of your beingness, this is not samadhi work of the 6 parami. This is some kind of interesting little minor exercise, which may or may not be useful or entertaining. Right? But the samadhi of the parami, right, is one of moving towards a togetherness. Wow. A togetherness of my body. Yeah, but my throat is all stuck and it hurts, and I got this fear, and I really want to get rid of that. Okay? I want to run away from this. I don't want to grab and hang on to that. Okay? And we begin to see that, in a sense, the deep meditation work, the deep samadhi, it's got something to do more with a sense of integrated opening, or if you like, inviting all the participants of the wholeness of being to listen to and respond to each other in a symphony of attunement. That you're becoming attuned to, like it's not I am being attuned to my breathing, or I am being attuned to the situation, but I am encouraging the entire volume of all the myriad musicians who are making up this symphony of living that I am to collaborate with each other. This is actually medi, means middle. Meditation is to bring middleness. Okay? So we have things like putting together or joining together a state of equilibrium. It's another kind of meaning for samadhi. Sometimes we say samadhi is developing concentration. And again, being a bit tongue-in-cheek, people completely kind of mislead themselves by pronouncing concentration incorrectly. You didn't realize that. You've caused unending suffering in your sort of Buddhist spiritual life because you've been trying to develop your concentration. You know, focused awareness, mindfulness, concentration. We use these. And we forget that actually it's not concentration. It's con-centra-tion. And it's realizing that it's con with centeredness. When you're centered, the wheel spins smoothly. There's equilibrium, there's balance. Concentration isn't like a kind of a huge diving event. You know, kind of like I always thought that the Buddhists, I mean, lots of religious traditions do this. They put their hands together like this when they pray. You know, and when I first got involved with Buddhism, I refused to do that. You know, I mean, I sat in the class with all these other kind of obsessionalist, kind of cultic people. I just sat there looking around at all these weirdos, listening and so on. This is my very early days, right? And then somehow the group kind of pressure started to coerce me into doing it because like I felt like a jerk not doing it. Everyone else did it, so I kind of did it. It's completely meaningless to me. Because it's sort of like God doesn't listen to you if your eyes are open. You know, you kind of you sit there, kneel on the. I can remember kneeling in front of my bed. How did I get into that? With my eyes closed and my head bowed, mumbling some words to God to kind of protect me through the night, and because obviously God didn't listen. If you opened your eyes, that was cheating or something, or you're kind of weird attitudes that we have about this. So finally one day I was liberated by the whole thing. Suddenly I was able to do this meaningfully because I realized that what this was actually about was that this was preparation to dive into the ocean of life, right? And so so you're on the diving board and you bring your hand, and if you just sit there on the edge of the board and just stay there like this, you're weird. You're just a kind of a same strange ritual cult following, it's like, right? But if you actually do this and then say, okay, enjoy, and you just jump off, jump over the edge. You jump into the fullness of the ocean and you find yourself awash on this timeless beach of knowing, discovering beingness in you. Again and again and again and again and again. Right? So concentration, we sometimes think of I'm going to as if I'm trying to dive into my breath or my nostrils or my left arm or this sensation or this unfinished business with my mother or this, that, or the other. There's just psychological or physical or what have you. And we think, can't run away from this. I've got to concentrate. I can't concentrate, people say. Yeah. But actually, if you think about it, the absence of concentration is the presence of fragmented, agitated chaos. Right? And so actually concentration, right? It's not trying to kind of get away from this to some safety point. But it has more a feeling of like I sit down into the fullness of my living and I'm experiencing the breathing rather than perching up on some undefinable place and watching my breath, right, in a detached manner. Right? This idea that you're going to be detached in your meditation work is there's something in it which is true and valuable, but it's actually mostly misleading. Because full meditation, real meditation, is total, utter engagement, not detachment, in a balanced, integrated fashion. And so what we're learning what people think they're practicing meditation, but imagine for a moment you're not practicing meditation. Imagine for a moment that when you meditate, you're learning to meditate. Because when you say you're practicing meditation, you're making this assumption that you know how to meditate. And the odd thing is that when you actually know how to meditate, you don't need to meditate. So you only meditate when you don't know how to meditate. So it might be an idea to forget about meditation. We've got a lot of kind of preconceived ideas, a lot of pollution from spiritual traditions that we need to let go of, right? And just pick up the idea, try and feel the sense, like the tactile kinesthetic sense of beginning to discern subtleties and rhythms and expressions of integration, and becoming more and more familiar with that. And in that familiarity, we become more skilled at participating, like intentionally nudging this or intentionally nudging that. And or sometimes being skilled at not nudging anything, because it becomes very clear that nudging just is not really helpful. It just tires me out, so I won't bother. I'll just be this. So concentration is a meaning, though, but it's like centrated, with center, being centered, not being off-centered, off-kilter. Okay? There's a tactile feeling of being centered, is there not? See if you can contact it right now. Can you appreciate any giving and receiving in the midst of this centeredness? Can you appreciate kind of perfumes of wholesome relating in the centeredness? Can you recognize a kind of effortless patience? You don't even consider patience because you're just in the flow of it. It's not a matter of being impatient or anything or trying. You're in the flow of, you're in the right timing. And while you're centered like this, can you feel the kind of effortlessness of it? This is skillful application of energy. And so, we could talk about Samadhi as being a state of utter attunement. Okay? Complete integration of inner and outer, micro and macro, self and other. Okay? And what we call the object of our meditation, the breath or the mantra or the visualization or the particular practice, is actually a support that we find useful in helping us recognize this integration of inner and outer, micro and macro, self and other. And so we could say Samadhi is, in one way of thinking about it, is a kind of a gathering of all the preceding four parami. Right? This animate animal born from life and living, which is a giving, receiving, communal relating, each with their timings, with their own inherent nudgings, right? And we're bringing this into integration. This is Samadhi parami. Into a seamless flow, if you like. Right? Bringing it together as a seamless flow of body, speech, and mind. I won't say this is meditation, but this is Samadhi. This is Samadhi parami. This is the perfection of Samadhi. And increasingly if we reflect on these things, we begin to have a sense that the six parami, for example, aren't really six. They're just kind of useful, somewhat useful ways of discerning the rich dynamic of the whole. Right? And we can use them as kind of reminders of where our working edge is. Right? And so, we say sometimes in Dharma circles, right, that it's actually really important to have a meditation practice. And it's very important to meditate regularly, in the sense of like lots of it. But what we're really saying is it's really important to have an integration practice. And it's really important to integrate regularly, right? And it's really important to become familiar with this so that it becomes like not a kind of weird effort that you're trying to enter into, but something which is so natural to your being. This is the heart of Dharma from a universal perspective. And so sometimes, for example, in the flow of our living, when things are going really well, the flow of our living is our meditation. It is our practice. This is all there is. But sometimes the flow of our living doesn't seem to be flowing so well, and it doesn't seem to be living so well, right? And it seems to be very much ours instead of theirs. There's a kind of like a huge fragmentation that takes place. Have you recognized that you occasionally have moments like this? Right? This is really important. It's sort of like, I did the parami last year. Now I'm moving on to some more profound teachings. In a sense, there's nothing more profound than the mystery of the living that we are. That you can't find anything more profound. And you also can't find anything more unknowable. Because why is it unknowable? Because you're finding yourself awash on a timeless beach of nowing, and because the now is now fresh from the now that was 2 seconds ago, you're discovering beingness anew. Now I'm here. You don't have to prepare for anything. If you ever had to prepare for classes and prepare for this and that and the other, it's great. In this, you don't have to prepare at all. You go, because you realize what I have to offer is the living that I am. Finished. And it's not a small little deal. It's actually the biggest thing that everyone has to offer. And then of course could we make wonderful music together? I mean, this surely is a kind of a big question for us. So with this in mind, it's like when things are going well, there's nothing to be said about it. But when things are not going well, then the skilled bodhisattva is not someone for whom all things go well. The skilled bodhisattva is the ones for whom, when things go well, they can kind of expand and open and just sort of dance in the kind of natural reverence of the moment. And when things are not going well, they can first of all actually recognize that they're not going well. That too, they can begin to recognize that in the not wellness of the moment is some kind of diminishing of the recognition of being animate and being an animal, and that all dear friends are too. Okay? And we can use these, then we can start to actually utilize these. And there's times when we recognize that it's good to have, imagine for a moment, not a daily meditation practice, but a daily practice of refreshment, of refreshing our recognition of this mystery that we are, and to sit in that. And, as I say, there's lots to be said on this, but it's more like supports for samadhi. That's what there's lots to be said about. Like more skillful ways of supporting this. But if what we've said so far isn't enough, then sit down in your Samadhi practice and smile. Let that be your support. Smiling, breathing, present, appreciating and offering. And in the first half of this Nectar of Naturalness, which is the latest book we did, I sort of go into that and give hints at trying to unfold that further. But it's actually very simple. It's just presence. And so with that, I'd like to stop and just see if there are any, let's just sit with this and see, make some space if there happen to be any kind of questions or clarifications that we could make, or observations that you might like to share. Okay. Karen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Tarchin. Can you hear me okay?
Very clearly.
Okay, good. I mean, you said so many really helpful things today. But just what came to my mind just in the last 5-10 minutes, when you're talking about the living that you are and doing your meditation practice and samadhi. And what came to mind was this experience I had once when I was at a concert with Yo-Yo Ma, and he was playing with the entirety of his being, and he was radiant, and he was emanating it, and it wasn't just the music, it was like he was embracing. You felt completely embraced and carried, and I thought, Chinrezi, I'm having a Chinrezi empowerment, and it was like so easy. It was samadhi because it was con-centra. I mean, there was nowhere else to be, right? It was total. So that was the living of that. And yeah, and you mentioned music, so I guess my brain put all that together. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you for taking us to the concert.
It was fantastic. If you ever get a chance, I don't know what. Yeah.
I can hear it, see it. Beautiful. Yes.
Thank you, Tachin, and so much of what you said we found so inspiring. And the one thing you talked about was integration practice, and I was just thinking, maybe from a more informal perspective, could you expand a bit on that? Are you thinking maybe more sort of touching base with nature and being outside and bringing awareness into things about different levels of what's going on?
Yes, I could, but not right now, because there's so much to be said. But what I would like to say, just as a tiny bit of a response, is that a lot of people associate meditation, even though we've said integration and centeredness and so on, but they associate meditation with kind of observation. And there is a broad tendency to speak about meditation through the metaphor of seeing. Like you kind of observe, you see what's going on, you're true seeing of what's going on, kind of thing. There's this Susan, back to love and clear seeing, it's like the seeing part. And the seeing is a sense that happens at a distance. Touch doesn't have any distance, but seeing does. So I can sit here and I can look at a star that's light years away. I'm not particularly aware of it affecting me in a way. It doesn't reach out and burn me or dazzle me or anything. It's very passive. Seeing seems to be a rather passive sense. You just kind of open your eyes and see what's happening over there. And the more you're convinced that you're seeing what's happening over there, the more you're unconsciously establishing yourself as being over here, doing the seeing of what's over there. And so in the name of observing what's going on, what you're really doing is not so much learning about what's going on, but strengthening a sense of you being separate from what's going on. It's a kind of tragedy in a way that in the name of meditation, which is, like to break through all of that, you actually enhance it. Makes things worse. Rather than doing that, right, imagine for a moment, like instead of meditation on something, right, imagine the times when you're not meditating, but you're in, I don't know if this is going to communicate, but I'm going to try, right, that you're in a kind of contemplative space. And it means that even if there's a lot of busyness, that what I mean by contemplative space, it has a kind of quietness about it, and a kind of almost like a sensitive feeling, like you can, like you're feeling the situation with the whole of your being rather than just with your eyes or with your intellect or with your hand or with whatever, it's and in that feeling, you are at the same time constantly making little adjustments that are in there, and then you adjust to the adjustment. This is attuning. This is the continuous attunement, right? And it's almost like to. So then what do we mean by formal meditation or formal practice or informal practice? That really all the practice is, when it's going well, right, is conducive to deeper and deeper familiarization with this very subtle, gentle, deep, sensuous contemplation, which involves everything. And you have a moment, you just go out in nature, you can be looking at the flower, what's that, what's the bee, and looking up in your book and seeing what its name is, and that's fine, it's great, wonderful thing to do. But there's some days when you're just there, and you're kind of like, in one sense you go, is anyone home? You're not doing anything, and yet you go, well, am I asleep? No, I'm wide awake. You're beginning to just get little tastes of, that's what I mean by we're trying to learn what meditation is, and when we finally learn what meditation is, we've got it. It's not like now you can practice it. Most of what we call meditation is just fumbling in the dark as we accidentally stumble upon the mystery of the living that we are. But there are kind of more skillful paths of stumbling and less skillful paths of stumbling. But after a while we start to identify the path of the stumbling as being the religious life. Instead of the, right? And so we cultivate this. So there's sometimes when I don't know how to find, when I get a sense of this, I that sense, as that becomes stronger, I might be holding the question, not to ask Tarchin, but just to ask for myself, is there some way how might I augment this or nourish this? You might not know what to do, but that's the question you have to be asking right in the vicinity, for that kind of mastery to come. Then in the meantime, though, some days we're not in that subtlety, so we can't do that kind of formless practice. There is no practice. We say, oh yeah, everything's meditation, but actually it's not. It's just messing around, struggling to survive. Then we might have a practice that begins with the metaphor of seeing. So I might focus on my breath. I'm focusing on a mantra. I'm focusing on a visualization. I'm focusing on a now through my body, right? I'm focusing on a movement of dance or whatever it is. But if it goes well, through that we begin to soften, all the edges begin to soften, and we start to rediscover this kind of contemplative thing. And can you read in a state of contemplation, or is your reading merely intellectual? Can you engage with other beings? This is sort of the advanced practice, is to be able to like be very close to this quality of contemplative engagement whilst in the midst of activity. Right? And you may find that it's like you can almost do this in really specialized, good, wholesome activities. But you find it really difficult to do it if you just got fired from your job, or you know what I mean? Or you just found out you're diagnosed with a major illness, or you know your country gets invaded in a war, and all of a sudden this goes out the window. The subtlety is clouded over, right? But then it might be skillful, like I can stay there with my anapanasati. I can come to my breathing, because you see the thing is that animate animals breathe. A non-breathing animate animal is not an animate animal, it's a corpse. So what I'm trying to say is that breathing is not a kind of artificial Buddhist invention that you should focus on, right? Breathing is a very skillful place to come back to. It's very simple. It's closer than hands and feet. It's like right at the core of your aliveness and beingness. Right? And yet I can kind of focus on that and settle in that. And then gradually there's times when I'm really focused on that. And it's interesting and it's engaging and so on. But there's other times when I'm just letting go of trying to focus on that, and yet it's still there. And that's why I say it's like Samadhi is, what is integration for someone who's struggling with addiction and violent unresolved problems and so on, right? What's their practice of integration? Well, it's going to be different than the practice of integration for someone who's mostly dwelling in a state of wonderment of nature and love and all these things. So the supports that we use at the different stages are different. Seems like different meditations, right? But the skilled meditator is also someone who doesn't hesitate to use some of the supports that are used at the crude level, the lumpy level, the kind of more collision-prone level, right? When they need it, and to not use it when they don't need it. Right? To let go of it. And that's the famous story of the Buddha of the Dharma is a raft to take you across the ocean of suffering. And they say when you get to the other side, don't pick up the raft and carry it on your back. Just leave it there and walk on. You don't need the practice. Right? So the kind of formless, spontaneous practice, in kind of very ordinary way of speaking, doesn't really blossom with strength and fullness and pervasiveness in our life, except, generally speaking, after a considerable amount of experimentation and exploration using more focused practices. And as I say, I'll be saying more about this as we take this topic a bit further, but it's too big to go into in so much detail. I'd like to stop now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, everyone here, for coming and joining us. And again, can we finish by just feeling for a moment? I'd like to turn the can you help me here? Stephen, can you do that? Just turn it around. That's it. Just right? And just sit for a moment and just appreciate our togetherness, right? we're on different continents, in different countries, in different climatic zones, different kind of states of health, different kinds of economic circumstances, right? But we are all here together. And it's wonderful. By the power of these wholesome activities, may our lives be rich with awakening. Living thus, may we abandon all unwholesomeness. Through the endless mystery of birth, illness, old age, and death, may we help all beings to realize their true interbeing, interknowing nature. Sarvamangalam, Sarvamangalam, Sarvamangalam. Thank you all. And wherever you're going, may you go well. May everyone enjoy good health. And if you don't enjoy good health, may you at least enjoy accepting the mystery of the life that's presenting.